The great ones, they're different. They really are. Not better, just different. Sure, there's a physical power, a mental strength, a complex but resolute constitution too. There's a whole lot more than just the measurables. That's something else, that intangible. It separates us from them. Welcome to the Legends series on Andy Raymond Unfiltered. As talented and competitive as I've seen, level-headed, complete and professional too. 302 games and 2 premierships at the one club. But who is Anthony Minichiello?
Yeah, that's a good question, Andy. I appreciate you having me on the podcast. I suppose I'm very much a family man. I love spending time with my family, and also played a lot of rugby league for the Roosters for 18 years and heavily into my health and fitness through sort of my own lived experience with injuries. And that's why I'm sort of so passionate about MiniFit now, which is my business, health and fitness programs for adults and children. And I just love learning new things, and I suppose being pretty lucky through my career to have another passion as I'm finishing up a professional sport, which is always hard for the transition.
You're very positive and very passionate, and the business, to a large degree, is aimed at the next generation of young Australians. It must be very rewarding.
Yeah, so when I first started MiniFit, it was all based around children's fitness, health and fitness, because, I sort of loved doing the holiday clinics and diving into school programs. And that's what I did when I had the business in 2012. I was doing school programs and school holiday clinics. But, obviously that evolved through COVID this year when all those had to be cancelled because of the lockdowns that were happening. So I sort of switched to more online, live and on-demand workouts, functional bodyweight workouts, just 10 to 20 minutes, and building a subscription base. And that's, adult-based now as well. And now that restrictions are slowly starting to ease in some states, school programs are slowly starting to come back. So at the moment, I've been sort of working hard on building the online model, and that's a different world. So diving into that and learning a lot more on how to build a subscription base has been where my time's been situated last, I suppose, 3-4 months.
Are you still physically fit and in good shape in retirement?
Yeah, I'm probably about 7 kilos lighter than when I played, Andy.
Wow.
I was always a lean guy anyway, naturally lean. So, when I stopped pushing heavy weights and stopped eating heaps, my body weight naturally come down to about 83, 84 kilos. So I move or do something every day. If it's a 6-minute workout, then it's a 6-minute workout. If it's an hour workout, it's an hour. My sort of goal or motto now is I want to be able to train every day and feel good every day. So, I don't push heavy weights anymore, although I do like lifting weights every now and again, but I like the body weight aspect of it all. I like the gymnastic strength training, and, most of it is all based around nutrition and your lifestyle anyway to be fit. So I'm passionate in those areas.
Minnie, you were a part of the first generation of players that began their journey as a full-time professional. From where I sat, you got it straight away. Was it an easy transition for you, basically from schoolboy to professional athlete?
Yeah, I don't know if I got the total professional bit until when I got injured, but I'll give you a little breakdown. I sort of grew up southwest of Sydney on 5 acres, so movement was always a part of my life naturally. Every day, outdoors until your mum or dad calls you in for dinner or lunch, you know what I mean? So that became just instilled in us about just exercising naturally without even knowing about it, always being outdoors, which I've got a passion for as well. But, then I got signed to the Roosters by the great Arthur Beetson at 16, and coming up through the lower grades and coming through to making my debut in the year 2000. And, you know, I sort of, that's when the game started to be much more professional. You know, from the 2000 to the mid 2000s, there was a big change.
Yeah.
And then from the mid 2000s to the 2010s, there's a huge change again, you know, and it continues to change a lot. But, you know, through that part, I was professional. I trained my butt off. You know, I trained harder than anyone, and I was naturally fit. But I was sort of pushing the envelope as well on the weekends. You know, because there was a bit of a drinking culture back in the game, which was fun. You know, we had the best times. You know, we will go out with the whole team, and it was all harmless, all good fun. You'd have a drink, and you know, at the times now a change. You can't really go out with 15 to 17 guys anymore. Yeah. It's just it doesn't work. So you know, we had some fun times, but we probably weren't being total professionals off the field. Today are much more professional than we were, because they got everything covered, all bases covered, from off field to recovery to the nutrition to hydration to their training. Everything's dialed in. I started to dial that in from a holistic point of view after my injuries in 2006, 7 and 8, when I had 3 spinal injuries. And that's when I started to really focus on those other areas.
It's a huge positive that often gets overlooked, but the game actually has grown so much in the last generation. Yes, there's still negative headlines. Yes, there's still problems with off-field behaviours, but the game has legitimately grown a whole lot in this last generation.
Oh, 100%. The professionalism of clubs, the NRL, players, is much better today than what it was when I first started, without doubt. In any industry, any sport, there's going to be a small percentage of players that will get themselves into trouble. That's just natural. Yep. We're dealing with young kids. Yep. That's always going to happen. It's just that rugby league is really focused on, especially in New South Wales and Queensland, by the media, and there's 6, 7 to 10 pages of league in the sport every day. So a lot of players that do make a mistake will get scrutinised, but that's what it is. It's a mistake. As long as kids learn from their mistakes, then it's all fine, because every kid's going to make a mistake. I made plenty. So the game is in a much better position now than what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, without doubt. There's much more education around. I come through when I first started, there's no social media, no camera phones. Then I got the start of all that in the mid-2000s, the late 2000s. And, kids, they have to deal with that as well as an added pressure. Yeah. So there's a lot more pressure on the kids these days to obviously perform at their best week in, week out, and then all the social media side of everything. Anyone could say anything at any point in time. So there's more pressure on the kids these days, but there is a lot more education from the NRL providing, getting the information out to the players on how to handle all this.
Any elite athlete will tell you it takes more than just being physically fit to be at your best. And our friends at Galaxy Finance can have you at the top of your financial game. From home loans to investments and self-managed super funds, they provide complete solutions. Call Galaxy Finance on 1300 91 7740 and mention you heard it on Andy Raymond Unfiltered to get an obligation-free chat to see how Galaxy Finance can assist you. You always struck me as a guy that knew what his responsibilities were on the field, but off the field as an athlete, and now as an ambassador with the Roosters, the NRL, and with your own company, you're championing those responsibilities. They're very important to you as a person.
Yeah, look, loyalty's a big thing for me. Being at the Roosters for 18 years, I'm proud of that. It's you owe the game a lot, because I grew up as a kid out southwest of Sydney, and got plucked out of the West and brought to the East by Arthur Beetson, and so many opportunities came from that and from rugby league. And if I didn't play rugby league, would I have my business Minifit? Would I be involved in the change room program with Matt Elliott?
Yep.
Would I, there's so many flow-on effects that happen from rugby league. So you have to, respect the game and give back to the game, give back to the kids or the community, whatever you may choose to do in some way, shape or form, and be grateful of the career that, grateful the career that I've had, which has been pretty amazing, really, when you look back at it.
You've already mentioned Arthur Beetson twice, so you obviously acknowledge he played a significant role in your development. What are your early memories of the great man?
Yeah, he's a great man. We had a great relationship, Artie and I. I remember, when I was playing in the under-15s at East Valley United, and a scout asked my mum for a tape to give to Arthur Beetson. My mum used to film every game. So she goes, yeah, I've got heaps. So she gave a few tapes over, and Artie obviously watched them and invited me to a training camp. And I was only 15, turning 16. I didn't know too much about Artie Beetson at the time, but I remember in that training camp at Narrabeen, he addressed the players or the kids, and you could just see that he had an aura about him straight away, and everyone was listening in. And from that point, I got offered a 2-year contract, and the relationship started to build with Artie. And right through my first grade years, he was a great storyteller and always able to give advice and just small little tips on your game to improve. And he was such a character. He's a legend.
On the field as a teenager, you actually represented Italy for the first of 7 times, and you really got noticed too. The game had started to expand its borders. To proudly wear the colours of Italy, how special was that for you and for mum and dad?
Yeah, it was. That was pretty special. 1999, I remember we finished the year, and we had Craig Salvatore was the Italian rugby league coach, and they were trying to qualify to make the World Cup. It was over in France and America, and Dave Riolo was playing, and we had a couple of other players. It was just Neil Pincinelli actually was assistant coach. He was going to play but broke his arm in the lead up. And, mate, I remember that tour. It was just an awesome tour. I was just a young 18-year-old, and just looking at these guys playing for a country, and obviously the heritage of where my parents are from. And we narrowly lost to Lebanon and missed out on the World Cup that year. But it was such a good tour, such a good time. And the boys that went on that tour, we're still friends with now, and have lots of laughs about that. And then, fast forward to the end of my career, I ended up representing again. Yeah. So it was a special time putting on the Azzurri, as they call it.
What was the hardest thing about moving into a first grade squad at 19? Were you intimidated? Were you nervous? Or were you comfortable straight away?
Well, I think in 1999, I was starting to really feel that I could just break tackles at will.
Yep.
I just had, I come from an athletics and gymnastics background, so they were my 2 main sports as a young kid. And I didn't start league until I was 10. So I think gymnastics, the little athletics, I was all long distance back then. So that gave me a real good fitness base. And the gymnastics really gave me strong core stability and a power base. I was tumbling, so I was doing trampolining and tumbling. So that really gave me a power base. And then as I developed and got a little bit bigger, because I was a little guy, and started to get into 80 kilos in around 1999, I sort of started to have speed and power, and that, and speed creates power anyway. So I started to just break tackles at will, and felt like that this was not coming easy, but I could just see things a lot clearer, and things were happening on the field for me. So in 2000, Graham Murray came to the club, and I basically just made the decision myself. I'm going to train full time. Like, it wasn't like they said,
wow.
come and train with the full time squad. I was like, you know what? I'm finishing up my apprenticeship as a cabinet maker.
Yep.
I'm just going to start training full time,
Wow.
and I did. That's
Cool.
what I did. And Graham Murray was all fine with it after I just kept showing up, and yeah, that was it. That year he put me on the bench. It was the year, obviously 2000 Olympics, and we started a lot earlier than scheduled. Yeah, if you remember that one. And I was, I think you could have 6 people on the bench for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the competition, and I was one of those 6. And I think it was, I don't know, round 6 or so, I got my opportunity. I come on in the last 10 minutes against the Bulldogs, and we got beat. But the following week, Graham Murray started me on the right wing back at Allianz Stadium against Manly. And yeah, I had a decent game, and that stayed in first grade since that point, which was pretty amazing.
It was round 4 against the Dogs, round 5 against
round 4,
Manly.
there you go.
That was your first full game. What do you remember of your debut, your first touch or your first tackle in first grade?
Yeah, so I remember being on the bench for that Bulldogs game, and I got thrown on, I think, the last 10 minutes. And, 10 minutes, bang, goes like nothing.
Yeah.
But the next game, Graham Murray said, you're starting right wing. And I remember being in the sheds and Allianz Stadium, and there's Rico, Adrian Lamb, there's Fletch, there's all these senior heads around. And just like, you get a bit overwhelmed and you're a bit nervous. And, Freddie comes up and he goes, mate, don't be nervous. You're here for a reason. Just go out and do your job. That's all we ask, And I remember my first touch was a grubber in goal, and I picked the ball up in the in goal, and I was trying to get out of the in goal, and Jeff Tuvey just come launching at me, and I actually bumped him off and got out of the in goal. And I remember Adrian Lamb just going, yeah, Minza, like just give me a great pump up, and that was the start of my career. It was amazing.
You're listening to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series. We have corporate and private sponsorship packages available. You set the terms. For further information on how you can become part of the team, go to the website andyraymondunfiltered.com.au and hit the sponsorship tab. A really successful first year for yourself and for the team, wasn't it? You made it all the way through to the big dance. We
did, yeah. It was it's a pretty big year, and that semi-final series was pretty amazing. That game against the Knights, where the footage keeps rolling as Joey Johns throws his mouth guard on the ground, and there's a good story to this game because during the first half, Rico does a hamstring.
Yep.
And we're getting beat at halftime, and we go out first under the tunnel, enter the field, and Rico's got his ice on his hamstring and he's hobbling down. And Joey Johns and the Newcastle Knights come down, and Joey goes, mate, no need to ice that, mate. You're on Mad Monday tomorrow, and just tapped him on the bum and ran onto the field. And tables turned that night where Freddie took the intercept, and we scored a couple of tries down our right side. I was playing right wing, and we went on to win the game. We ended up playing in the grand final against the Broncos, who were a red hot team that year.
That was one of the great sides, wasn't it? That Brisbane side of 2000.
Unbelievable. Brad Thorne and Webke and Wendell Saylor and Lockyer, all at their prime.
Yep.
And that I don't know if you remember, Andy. That year it was unlimited interchange. Now, if we can just have a think about that now. Imagine the game was unlimited.
How much quicker,
Yeah. So the game, I reckon Wayne Bennett, I think he made, from memory, 60-odd interchanges. And I think we only made like 18 or so. So he was just turning over the forwards every 5 minutes,
Almost NFL style, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what it was. And, we held our own that day. We lost 14-8, I think it was. But that was my first year in first grade, and then the Olympics rolled on. It was like, how good's life? You know what I mean?
Graham Murray, as you said, was your first coach along the journey. You've played under Ricky Stewart, Chris Anderson, Brad Fittler, Brian Smith and Trent Robinson at the Roosters. Looking at that list, some great rugby league men, but they're very different as blokes. Were they different as coaches?
Yeah. All of them had completely different, I suppose, takes on attack, defence, and the way and culture. But looking back, you take things from all those coaches. You know what I mean? They all had strengths and weaknesses, I suppose. But as a player, you try and learn off the coach that you have at the time, and I learn off all of them. There's no doubt. And I was pretty lucky. I had Gus in Origin, and I had Wayne Bennett in the Australian team. So, I've had some wonderful coaches through my career, no doubt.
When Ricky arrived in 2002, I thought it was the year that defence got serious, and it really changed the entire game. Rushing became the norm. It was physical. It was brutal. And we really hadn't seen anything like that to this degree before. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I think we sort of changed the game that year.
Yeah.
Just Ricky come on board, and he had a preconceived idea that that us Eastern Suburbs blokes are soft, and he really gave it to us in preseason. But we were ready. Like we had great senior players that year: Freddie, Rico, Peter Cusack, and then we had guys like myself, Craig Wing, Mick Crocker, Chris Flannery, Shannon Hegarty. Like all these guys that were just ready to go, would throw anything at us and we'll just take it on. So, we trained our butts off every preseason with Ricky, but we believed we were the fittest team in the NRL at the time, and we were right up there. Everyone was getting 14 on the beep test, even front rowers.
Wow.
And we had Adrian Morley as well. So, and Ricky would wind him up every game, and he was just a machine. Craig Fitzgibbon, another machine who would go all day. These guys were just unbelievable. So, we just our line speed, we worked on it, and we I suppose frightened teams out of playing their natural attack. We just rushed them, and we went on a good run for 3 years.
You'd go on to win your first premiership in 2002. What do you recall of that grand final, or does the day and the event become somewhat of a blur because it is just so magical?
It's definitely magical, there's no doubt. I think, we won 9 straight to win that year, and it was by that 9 straight. By the time we're getting to 5, 6, 7, and 8, we just knew that we had the better of teams, that we could last longer than any other team. And we were coming home strong in the second half. That first half against the Warriors, it was tight. Stacey Jones was on fire. But that second half again, that obviously the 40-20 by Freddie, and then the Villasanti hit on Freddie, and Moz getting angry, and Fitzy playing out of his skin as well. We just had players ready to win a comp, and we just went on with it and won by a fair amount in the end. And I was 22, so you just think, how good's this? I suppose you don't really soak. We'll probably talk about 2013 later, but you don't really soak it in as much as when you're in your 20s. You just party for 6 weeks.
And well deserved, mate. You've mentioned Craig Fitzgibbon a couple of times. You've got him there as an assistant at the Roosters. As a footballer, he may not be the most underrated of all time, but he's up there on the podium. He was a wonderful contributor to any football side that he was in.
Oh, mate, he was an absolute machine, Fitzy. He's probably one of the toughest that I've played with in the Roosters. Him, Morley, just tough. Like Fitzy was obviously a rangy back rower, but I would sometimes catch a ball at fullback and run it back into the line.
Yeah.
And the first person back there is Fitzy taking that next run. It should be a centre or winger.
Yeah.
And it's Fitzy all the time. He was just a machine, very fit guy. Loved playing with him. Great mate of mine.
The move to fullback following that grand final win, was that an easy transition? Because it appeared from our side of the fence it wasn't. It suited you, and you, in fact, took your game probably to another level immediately.
Yeah, you're right. So obviously Luke Phillips was the fullback, and he had about 12 needles in his shoulder that grand final just to get through the game. He was basically stuffed, And then he announced his retirement, and everyone was like, mate, why are you retiring? You're only 28 or something. And he was lying about his age for years. He goes, no, I'm 32. Yeah, I've had enough. So I remember preseason, we had Justin Hodges in the team that year too. He's played a bit of fullback.
Yep.
And Ricky came up to me and also he said, I've approached Hodjo. He said, oh, look, I'm thinking about playing you at fullback. What do you think? And I was like, yep, give me a crack. Because, I was naturally fit, as we mentioned before, and I wanted to get my hands on the ball a lot more. I wanted to do more. I wanted to be in and around the ruck, supporting the forwards. And, so I said, give me a crack, 100%, And Ricky gave me the first crack. And, my first game was the World Club Challenge over in England when it was freezing cold. And we dusted them St Helens 38-0. Yep. And that really kick-started my career and elevated it up into the representative level, going from wing to fullback. And, that was Ricky's thoughts and doing. So, I thank him for that.
As you mentioned, representative football was just around the corner. We're still in 2003. It was happening very fast for you. Did it feel like everything was happening fast? Did you have to take time out and almost slow the mind down and the ride down a little?
That was part of the problem when I broke down, because I was all 100 miles an hour. I was that on and off the field as well. That was me. I was high energy.
Yep.
And no downtime. I always had to hang out with guys or be with a group of players or people or whatnot. That's how I was. So at the time, it was just, this is great. Haygood's life.
Yeah.
Grand final win, another grand final in 2003, and it was just like a cycle that I was going through and living fast. It was good at the time, but I'm sure we'll get into why I got injured down the track in 2006.
The Anthony Minichiello story continues in part 2 of this very personal interview, coming soon to Andy Raymond Unfiltered. Welcome back to Andy Raymond Unfiltered. In part 1 of the Anthony Minichiello story, we spoke the early years, the influence of the great Arthur Beetson, and a premiership in his first season. But amongst the celebrations, there were frustrations and a life change. Over the journey, a Dally M fullback of the year, a Harry Sunderland medalist, a Wally Lewis medalist, and then the Golden Boot in 2005. A strange question that I don't think I've ever asked anyone before, but what does it feel like to be labelled as or voted as the best at something in the world?
Yeah, I suppose at that time, you don't even really think about it. You just go on your merry way. As we mentioned, I was just living a fast-paced life, and I'd move on to the next thing. I think I didn't even collect the actual award until months and months later. It was just, all good.
Yeah.
But when you look back and you think, they're pretty amazing awards to win. In Origin, the Wally Lewis and the Harry Sunderland medal. I think that was 2 years in a row as well, and then the Golden Boot. So they're wonderful achievements. And at the time, I just put them on the mantelpiece or forgot about them and just kept going.
They mean more in retirement, do they?
I think they do, yeah. Like that, when you're in it, you're always trying to improve your game. You're always trying to get better. You just, you're moving on to the next thing. You're looking to evolve. So you can't really look back too often, you know what I mean?
Where's the Golden Boot now, mate?
Well, that's a funny story. It's hilarious. So when they actually gave it to me over in England, it said 2004 on it. It was actually the wrong plate on it.
Oh, no.
So I come back to the Roosters, and I don't know how it got into the hands of Joel Monahan, and his old man has it at his place, right? So his old man's got the 2004 Golden Boot winner, Anthony Minichiello, on his mantelpiece. And it's funny that I only approached the NRL in like 2013 or 14 and said, this is what's happened. And they said, "Oh, we'll have to do you a new one." I said, "Yeah, okay, great." So I gave them the boot. They gold plated it, and to be honest, I still haven't picked it up. I've got to go down there and get it.
Oh, too good.
Yeah.
Mate, a lot of positives, a lot of celebrations. There were tough times. At the absolute top of your game, 2006 arrived, and March 26, you hurt your back for the first time. What do you recall of the game and the incident against Canberra?
Well, 2006. So it wasn't a proper incident. So, I'll tell you what happened in pre-season 2006. Mid-Jan, I had a training camp down the South Coast, and we're in a scrimmage against our reserve grade team, and I just hear a little click in my back, and my back goes into spasm, and I just sort of walk off the field and went, "Rick, I don't know, something's happening." He goes, "Yeah, take a rest." I sat down, and then I just experienced some nerve pain down my left leg, and I just sort of had to lay down and try and get some relief.
Yeah.
And from that, my back went into spasm, and I just couldn't really move, and I couldn't drive home, so I got Finchy to drive my car back into the east when we finished our camp, because it was the last day of camp. And I couldn't really move for 2 weeks. That's how sore it was. So it took 2 weeks to really the pain started to ease. But, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, I've had a couple of little flare-ups before. In 2004 and 5, I had cortisones in my lower back. I just thought, it's not a flare-up in my lower back. You'll be fine. And this one did take longer than usual. But I rehabbed it, and I got back for round 1. And as I play round 1, round 2, round 3, into round 6, this nerve pain was constantly there. And every time I would be at home and I'm just relaxing and I'd go to bend over or go to put my shoes on, it would dig in a little bit more. But every time I'd warm up and go and train and play, the pain would fade away. Every time I warm down, it'll increase ever so slightly. And I did get picked for the Anzac Day test that game, and Tony Ayoub was a physio, and he went, do all the shoulder testing, bend down, touch your toes. I was bending down and touching my knees before that sharp pain was digging in my left leg.
Wow.
And I would go back up because I didn't want to, have it hurt me anymore.
Yeah.
And he said, "Mate, go down and touch your toes." And I said, "I can't. I can only go down and touch my knees before that pain digs in." And he started asking questions, and I was explaining what I was feeling. And he went, "Mate, that doesn't sound right." He ruled me out of that game, which I wasn't happy about, but he sent me to a specialist, and I was up at St. Vincent's, and they said I had a ruptured disc in my L5-S1, lowest disc in your back. And it was probably one of the first back operations at the time. They said, "You need a back op, a laminectomy. This is what happens." We scrape the disc away from the sciatic nerve, which is permanently hitting. That's the pain you're experiencing down your left leg. But to this point, I played, I think, more games than anyone in the 3-year period. So I thought to myself, you know what, I'll go in, have this operation, have a rest this year, and come back bigger and better in 2007. So that was my whole thought pattern around it. And after the operation, the nerve pain immediately subsided. And, again, I was running within 6 weeks and pushing my training, but I still hadn't changed anything in my lifestyle. I was eating whatever I wanted.
Yep.
I was, prescription medication, anti-inflammatories morning and night, because I thought they were helping me.
Yep.
It was the lifestyle wasn't that good.
Yep.
So I come back and prepared for the 2007 season, and I played the first 10 games, but I've got scar tissue in my back now that's always hurting. So I was doing 2 anti-inflammatories in the morning and night, daily, every single day. I played game 1 of Origin. I'm in camp for game 2, and we're out at Coogee. It's 3 days out before the game. We're catching the team bus after breakfast to head out to stay at the Novotel at Homebush.
Mm-hmm.
I literally just roll out of bed to put my socks on. Bang, a click again in my lower back. And this time I had severe nerve pain down my right leg, the opposite leg. And my back goes into spasm. I lay on the floor, and literally that's where I stay. Couldn't get up, and the bus sails off, and I get ruled out of that game. I go see my surgeon and specialist again, and he said, "Look, the disc above has done the same thing. Do you want to come back and play a contact sport?" I said, "Yeah, I'm 27, of course."
Yeah.
So he said, "Look, we're going to have to do a smaller operation, a microdiscectomy. You don't want to affect the structure of your spine because you already had one operation there, but you need to take this recovery a lot slower." So I do that. I take the recovery a lot slower. And again, I'm still not changing anything in my lifestyle, like with my food and my prescription medication and hydration and sleep. It was just like what I was doing in the past. 2008 rolls around and I play again. I think it was only the first 6 or 7 games, and I'm on the bench press and I just push out a rep and I pinch a nerve in my neck. Don't think anything of it. Go out and play that game on the weekend, and towards the end of the game's almost finished, and I grab the water bottle with my left hand. I go to squeeze the water out, and my wrist just caves in. I can't even get the water out of the bottle. I'm like, shit, that's weird. What's going on? No power in my arm. Tell the doc after the game, he goes, "Woof, that doesn't sound right." MRI the next day, that comes back, and I had a huge disc bulge in my C5, C6 vertebra, and the MRI said you're 1 millimeter away from your spinal cord. You know, any type of hit could put you in a wheelchair.
Wow.
And I remember Tony Abe grabbed me out of training and goes, "Mate, this is serious."
Yep.
And, you know, again, a million thoughts are running through your head. What's going on? I'm thinking what's going on with my spine at this point, because I've had 2 operations in my lower back.
Yeah.
I had a small disc bulge in my mid-thoracic, mid-back, and now I've got this huge disc bulge in my neck. And, you know, I'm seeing specialists and seeing doctors, and they're all saying the same thing. Your discs are dehydrated and you've got to manage this. You can't really rehydrate them again. And, you know, at this point in time, I was pretty lucky that I met Terry, my wife, and she'd always pushed me to go and find answers. You know, why is this happening? You know, like go and ask questions, find out why is this happening. So I sort of went on this quest to try and find out the reasons why. And you know, all of the conventional model is just to treat the symptom, not trying to find the root cause. And I was trying to find the root cause of why it was happening. Yep. And I was lucky that I found a guy who I'm good mates with now, Aaron, who ties in a lot of nutrition and lifestyle and recovery along with his functional movement training. And I started working with him to repair my spine. Yep. And dived into that wholeheartedly, because he gave me a bit of confidence that you can if you're willing to make some sacrifices and take it slow. And so we're up to 2009 now, and round 2 down in Canberra, and I do all my ligaments in my left ankle, the syndesmosis, 3 major ligaments. Yep. And the rotation force was so big that I had a spiral fracture up in my fibula under my knee. So I'm out for another, I think, 20 or 22 weeks with that, coming off contract, mind you, as well.
Yeah.
And that's at that point, that's when I started to dive into the research, and I started to really evolve what I was eating, what I was doing with my recovery, and really fine tune that. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I've seen my body heal from it.
Griffin Air Conditioning offers the highest quality of air conditioning sales and service across the Sydney metropolitan area, providing installation and maintenance to commercial, domestic and industrial customers. Working with this team, you'll be guaranteed the latest services, technology and developments in the industry. Visit griffinair.com.au and tell them we sent you for a cool deal. The injury, the rehab, the frustration, how did you remain positive? How did you remain focused and in a good headspace? Or are you just young and silly and thinking, yeah, this will be fine in a month?
Well, at the start, I thought that, without doubt. Yeah. Probably the first 2 operations, and then then you have the disc bulge in your neck that they're saying it's at 1 millimeter away from your spinal cord. That's when things start to get serious. You know, yeah, you're not. You know, this is just a game. You're dealing with your life here.
Yeah.
So that's when I had to make change, and I was lucky that I had my wife. I had Terry. You know, she is a great communicator. So speaking to her about things and, you know, really encouraging me to go find answers was really important for me. So, and that's when I started to, because I suppose, 4 years of injuries, I'm always a naturally positive guy, and intrinsically motivated from within. But I suppose, your mental, your emotional, and your physical state are starting to, they're starting to wane after 4 years of injuries. There's no doubt about it. You got to be honest there. But I always wanted to find an answer. I still believe that I could come back and offer some really good footy for the Roosters. So I just went out and searched and researched and learnt and read and and then I revamped everything basically.
What was your family saying? And I'll focus on mum in particular. A mum seeing her son go through so much pain, discomfort, and agony. How tough was that on them?
Yeah, it was certainly tough. I think, they watch every game of mine. My mum filmed every game from when I was a kid. And, the first 6 years of my career were just phenomenal,
Yeah.
And then it just gets all taken away. And then there's an issue again, and an issue again, and an issue again. And it kept happening. And, I knew they were sort of worried. They kept all asking, how's your back? How's your neck? Is everything all right? They didn't want to force me into saying you should give it up or you should have a go. They always left it open for me to make the decision on what I wanted to do, but they were just there for
How
support.
close did you get to that decision and saying, okay, for life in general, not just football, I'm going to have to stop playing?
It wasn't really that close. Like
Okay.
I like the neck thing was a massive eye opener, and it sort of cemented that I needed to change my approach to I suppose everything in my life, and I had that support from Terry and my family. So I always had this burning desire that I was going to come back, that from within, that I was going to come back and play. So I just made it happen. I just worked hard, and I was consistent with it. Consistent with my nutrition, consistent with my hydration, sleep, my recovery. Stretch routines, morning and night. Visualization, or now it's called meditation, all of it. I was consistent with it all.
With the setbacks, it makes the bounce back often more appreciated and makes you prouder of what you've done. In 2011, you had returned to the type of form that saw you once again put a State of Origin jersey on. How fulfilling was that?
Yeah, that was pretty fulfilling. Because I think that game in 2007, when I was already been injured and I got selected back in Origin, I had a game. It was a game up in Queensland, and my wife's pretty passionate, and she could get into a few arguments if she wanted to in the crowd. And I said, "Oh, look, don't come up to Queensland because you'll probably end up in an argument. Just wait to Sydney game 2.
You'll have to fight a whole state."
Yeah, that's right. So I said, "Look, don't come up. Wait to Sydney." And as the story went, as I just mentioned, I got injured and didn't play that game in game 2.
Yeah.
So I always sort of regretted that moment. And then coming back in 2011, she was at the game and all the family were there, and I scored the winning try, and that was a pretty amazing moment, for everyone and myself included.
Did it feel right? Did it feel as though, through all the setbacks and the pain you'd been through, that the football gods or whoever was looking over you, just did you a favour and made it right on that night?
Yeah, I suppose so. I was hoping they'll make it right in game 3, but that wasn't the case. But look, that was a really special moment, that one, game 2.
There were opportunities to leave the Chooks. As you look back now, how satisfying is it to be able to call yourself a one-club player?
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that moment, or that achievement, I should say. Because towards or throughout your whole career, it was probably towards my end where you get offered a little bit more somewhere or overseas, all that type of stuff. But I sort of, you build up so many good networks and connections with a club. I was always happy to stay at the club, even if it was for a little bit less.
Yep.
But to think more long term, to think, when I retire, I'm still connected here.
Yeah.
They will offer me a role, and I can use these networks to build upon my own stuff that I wanted to do. So I always thought more long term than just 3-4 years ahead. And I'm lucky that I did, because my transition was a lot smoother than some of my friends that chopped and changed their clubs. You know what I mean? And because the transition is big, there's no doubt there's still a huge transition for me, but it was made a lot smoother because I stayed at the club. Yeah, for sure.
Not only did you stay, you got to captain your beloved club and then lead them to the 2013 Premiership. Having been what you'd been through, that's the type of stuff dreams are made of.
It is, and that's probably my greatest achievement. We've mentioned all those individual awards, but I'll take 2013 hands down above them all. You know what I mean? It's just, 2013, that year for us was huge. We got Robbo on board. We built a really good squad. We obviously bought some classy players, but we had to build a culture from scratch. The year before we didn't even make the semis. So we built a culture from scratch, and that year we held 6 teams to nil. 6 shutouts was a record. Minor premiership, and we worked hard in the preseason to be a second half team, and on the final day of that grand final, we were down by 20, and we had to pull that out of our hat. It actually wasn't out of our hat. It was what we worked on already all preseason, so we knew it was there. And we scored 3 tries to win the match, and holding up that trophy. And my wife was heavily pregnant at the time. All the family there, mum and dad. It was probably the best feeling.
If you're enjoying Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series, we'd love for you to go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening and subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. Best weekly review wins an Unfiltered Trucker's hat. You played on into 2014. In hindsight, could have you easily walked away after grand final day, the premiership, and have that fairy tale finish?
Yeah, a lot of people said, why don't you retire? 33, you finish with a grand final win. But I still had that drive to train, compete, and play. And because I always thought, what happens if that feeling never comes? So I always listen towards the end, you listen to people when they retire and their speeches from any sport. And most of them say, like, when you know. And when I finished in 2013, I was like, no, I'm still got more left. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Then we went again representing Italy, a captain Italy in that 2013 World Cup over in England. And I come back after that campaign, and a week later we have Azura, our daughter, in the 2nd of December. And I had all that time off because I played in the World Cup. I could come back mid-January, and I had lots of time with the family. And I went back into preseason training mid-Jan, and I found it hard to get into for the first 2 weeks. And I wanted to be home with the little one. And I was like, maybe I was thinking, is this the feeling, or is just because, I've had our first daughter, I want to be home. Anyway, as the season rolled on, that feeling just kept growing, and it kept growing. And I thought to myself, this is it. This is what people talk about when they know. And, my wife was encouraging me to play another year, because I could have probably physically pushed the body more another year, but mentally I was already starting to check out. And once you start to check out mentally, you're done, I feel. So, with 6 weeks to go on the comp, I made the call, and that was a great decision.
If you had to describe yourself as a footballer, how would you?
Energetic, and just like a ever-ready battery. Don't stop.
Have you ever experienced in the years post-career a frustration when you look back and think, because of injury, I didn't get the best out of myself and I wasn't able to show that to others?
No, not at all. I don't have that feeling whatsoever. I went through and I tallied up how many games I've missed, and it was 65 games. You know, I could have been up there with Darren Lockyer, but I do not have that feeling one bit. I'm grateful that I had those injuries, because this is why I'm so passionate about health and fitness now, and why I have MiniFit, and why I'm involved in the change room. Why we've just started a mental health charity. It's because of all those injuries and setbacks that I had. I evolved as a person. So I'm grateful for what happened back then. They were all life lessons.
I love it. Such a positive attitude, and one of the many reasons that so many people on and off the field gravitate towards you. I do have to ask, at 40 years of age, how's the back now?
Mate, it's great. So, yeah, actually, no, this November, two years ago, I had a disc replacement on L4-5, one of the second disc I got injured.
Yep.
And the first disc, my L5S1, I got a fusion done. And literally, it has been my best operation I've had. Like, I used to get stuck if I sat down for 15 minutes or longer, if I drove somewhere. If I sneezed, I would have to brace myself. Now that is all faded away, and it's like my back's brand new again. It's great.
302 games, 11 origins, 19 tests for Australia, 11 for Italy. You left a wonderful mark on the game, both on and off the field. Anthony Minichiello, you, sir, are a legend. A new episode of the Legends series drops every Tuesday, and the weekly Wodge every Thursday. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, and follow us on social media at The Andy Raymond. Then you won't miss a thing. Come back soon, Legends.